Dun, 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 dun.
Back and back.
Ba-do-do-do-do-do,
Yeah.
dun,
Okay.
do-do-do, 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 do. You already guessed it?
Dang, I hate
Okay,
those
that was
notes.
pretty good. That was pretty fast.
That's solid. You want to do another
Yeah.
one? Cause
Oh, gosh, I've been
No.
working all week on that one.
okay.
Um,
Well,
well,
you think?
I say welcome everybody to the show.
Okay. Yeah. Welcome everyone back. If this is your first episode, welcome to the for the first time to the Open House podcast with Pat Roach. I'm Andres Gamboa, just the lonely little ignorant fool that doesn't know anything about real estate who is going to ask all the questions on your behalf. However, if you do have questions for us, make sure you message us on Instagram or wherever we have our newsletter if that's already out yet. We're building the plane as we fly because that is a great way to kind of interact and see what people want to listen to. If you don't know, we are going to cover all the topics regarding real estate, and I know there's a ton of really cool podcasts out there already, but you might think to yourself, what's up with this one? Well, Pat Roach is the president of Southwestern Real Estate, has been in the business for well over 15 years, and has grown an amazing company. So maybe you're an agent wanting to get more information on how to grow, maybe go and start your own company, or maybe you're a consumer. Maybe you're looking to buy your first, second, third home. Maybe you're looking for rental properties. Anything of that sort, we're going to start talking about it with a little bit more excitement, I hope, than somebody else. Maybe a little bit more humor. As you can tell from our intro, we don't have an intro. The whole theme is that Pat just sings a song and I try to guess what it is.
Are we gonna have to pay licensing for these songs that
No,
I'm singing?
I don't think so, because we're not using the actual, we're not actually using the song itself. We're just singing it, which they can't,
I
they
was
can sing it.
prepared to go longer with the idea that you may not know.
Well, now what I'm going to do is, even though if I know it right away,
Just
I'm
let
just
it
going to
play.
let it play
Yeah.
until you run out of
Until I get bored with it. All right.
So, just so you guys know, you can skip ahead to the main topic today. We are usually going to talk a little bit about catch up on the week individually, talk a little bit about some cool things we discovered about the world, and then we jump into the topics of real estate. So feel free to skip ahead like 5-10 minutes if you want to not care about that. However, if you want to laugh on your way to work, you probably just let it play and stick around for the beginning of it, because we have some good times at the beginning of episodes anyway. All right, so here we go with how today we're going to discuss how the weather was by only using a sound.
Wait,
So
we're
how's-
transitioning to the weather already?
Oh, well,
We
I
didn't
guess we
even
could.
chit chat.
Oh, we didn't even chit chat.
I didn't even hear what's going on except that you were. Okay, I think it's worth mentioning that you had a discussion with your wife where you basically said you would never divorce her unless
Yes.
she killed your child.
That's worth mentioning. Yes, we were talking about commitment and what commitment actually means. So to me,
He's
commitment
all
means
in.
I promised I'd marry her until we died, with the slight caveat that, if she gambles away all her money, or if she has an affair, or if she ends up being part of the mafia and I never knew, something like that,
Which
I
are
would never
all
leave.
things that I could see Bree doing.
Absolutely.
To be honest, she's
It
a wild
describes
card.
her entirely. That's why I married her. In fact, So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, she's got potential for nefarious purposes. Anyway, we were having this discussion. I was like, I would never leave. If I found out you were secretly part of the mob or something, actually, that'd be kind of cool. A lack of crime a
Oh
little
my
bit on the side. But the only reason I would ever leave her was if she was if I came home one day and she's dunking her kids in the tub or something, not good.
No, that's a cry for help. And I
And even
am
that.
convinced you would help her get the help she needed.
Yeah,
But you might not be able to look her in the face again. So that's a problem for a long-term
It'd be
marriage.
awkward. It'd be awkward for a little bit. You'd be like, "Oh, so what do you want? You want pad thai for dinner? Also, you remember last month
Last month.
when?
That was a short stay at the mental hospital.
Yeah.
Well,
Or whatever.
anyway, that's what's going at Andre's house.
Those are the conversations here. And for the disclaimer for everyone listening, I am not a real estate. I do stand-up comedy, so you're gonna hear some craziness out of me on this side of the show. From Pat, you'll hear wisdom and awesomeness and
Well.
humor. From me, you'll hear just outrageousness. So
Yeah.
there's mine.
So, and I would say if there's any past clients of mine that are listening, you'll know whatever Andre says is up to him. So don't put that on me. That's
That does
just
not
my friend.
endorse.
I have professional standards that I'll try to hang in with. Although this is going to meander a little bit into things that you're like, geez, I never knew my realtor had his own life, but
Yeah.
apparently he does.
We're just going to peel back different layers of the Pat Roach onion
Yeah.
that are just juicy.
So speaking of my real life, it's Lent. Hey!
Oh, yes, it
it's
is Lent.
Lent.
What did you give up?
Here's what I found. I found that you're really not supposed to talk about what you gave up.
Oh, really?
That's kind of a thing.
Oh.
That
I
you
gave up
do
being
in
Christian
secret.
during Lent.
Well,
Just the ultimate sacrifice.
just
really,
to
if you
see
think
what
about
it's
it.
like, you know.
Something I care about a lot. My faith.
No joke. I heard this Irish theologian talking about, he was a professor or whatever, and he was like, I have encouraged many of my students to try atheism for Lent.
Oh,
And
no
I
way.
thought that was the most stupid thing I'd ever heard, but it's because I'm uncomfortable with the idea of deviating from religious tradition. Well, actually, I should say I used to be. Now I'm not as scared anymore. But the idea being, oh, try it on, see what that's like for you,
Yeah.
and whatever. Okay, so I'm not doing that. But here's the reason why Lent always kind of is a reminder for me. So Lent coincides with the end of my social media participation from a handful of years ago, I think. And not to say that I am, I don't know how to get rid of a Facebook page. So I still have a social media footprint of some kind. I'm just not using it, and I don't post anything. But here's why that all came together with Lent. So I had a run probably 5 years ago where I was working with this one particular dude. His name's Kamal, and he's Sunni Muslim, grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago, but dresses like somebody who just got here from Pakistan, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of like, I kept trying to figure out, like, wait, so where are you really from? And he's like, no, I grew up in Glendale Heights. It's like, wait, what? Because I'm so ignorant, right? And I just don't know, like, he's a teacher, he's a librarian, and this is like appropriate dress for his world.
Yeah.
And his wife wears a burqa and covers her face, and all the things. And so I was helping them get a place, and he and I just really clicked, and we started hanging out, getting coffee, talking theology, and it was awesome. And he is a very good friend to this day. And he introduced me to one of his buddies, Bilal, who bought a house, and one of his buddies, Hisham, who bought a house, and it just kept going. I've worked with his brothers. It's just kind of like, he is an awesome client. Actually, we're working on, he actually just bought his second place last summer, so that was kind of fun. I bring all that up to say this, as I'm, because I'm curious and I don't know anything about how, the Muslim faith works, I would just say, he just let me ask him whatever I wanted. Well, come to find out, Ramadan is the one and only holiday that Muslim people celebrate. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. So that was news to me. So I'm learning more about Ramadan, and then I realized, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, the fast that you guys do is pretty intense. Like, they are hardcore about their fasting. I mean, they definitely take the fun out of fundamentalism. Like, it's hardcore. But what's also true is that Ramadan and Lent, where Christians traditionally fast in some way, they actually overlap a good chunk almost every year.
Yes.
And I just thought it was so amazing. So I get on Facebook. This is when I used social media. And I was like, hey, since Ramadan and Lent overlap, I'm going to be doing a fast. And when Lent ends and Ramadan continues, that's how it worked out that particular year, I'm going to keep fasting just in solidarity with a huge chunk of the world that continues to fast in their, their spiritual tradition and practice or whatever. So it's just like, a nice neighborly thing to do. You guys are fasting. You like fasting. That's helpful for you and your faith. I fast, and it's helpful for me and my faith. So I'm just going to do it for the duration of both. And you wouldn't believe the kind of comments that people put on my post.
We're just hating on it.
People were mad about it. And I was
Wow.
just like, oh my gosh, you guys just, who asked? Who asked you? I guess, and that's where I was like, why do I care to put it out there? But I did do
Wow.
that one more time the following year, and I added to my comment, I'm doing this fast again, and here's why, and blah, 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 community and, solidarity with God's children and the planet. And if you don't like it, don't say anything. I don't care. And that
Wow.
helped. I didn't get as many comments.
Wow.
But it also was the thing where I was like, yeah, this isn't something I need to do. I don't need social media, and I'm going to live a life without it. And that's
Yeah.
what I do.
That's wild. Well, I have so many like thoughts on this, but I know we have to get moving.
Give me a
to the
couple.
weather. Well, first of all, it's interesting because atheists. I'll go back to your comment about trying on atheism and how nerve-wracking that could be. It's because logically, atheism makes sense
I don't know about that.
completely, right? Like, hear me out. It takes faith and belief. That's the whole point of faith. If you could just prove that God existed, then you wouldn't need faith because you could just reason it out like a math equation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it
Sure.
would just be, you would need faith for something that was proven.
Well, the way that I think of it as being logical, I agree with what you're saying, first of all. The reason I think it actually ends up being logical is because now there's other answers to this question, but in the end, don't you ultimately end up going, okay, but what was before that?
Right.
And then what was before that? And eventually get to a spot where you're like, well, then there's this big mysterious thing, and I don't know that I can claim to fully understand that thing, but that's it. That's
Right.
God.
I totally agree. Now, here's the thing. There's a guy named Stephen Meyer. He has a whole bit about like why God exists mathematically, and it was really interesting. I was a math guy in college. That's a whole different can of worms. Yeah. But my point is, I was listening to Ricky Gervais, who's like a very staunch
Yeah.
atheist, and he was talking to Stephen Colbert, and he was like, "Do you believe in the other 3,000 deities that like human beings have come up with at all?" And Colbert was like, "No." So he goes, "So you believe in one out of 2,999 roughly?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I just don't believe in one more than you don't. So like, I don't believe in any of the 3,000, and that's the difference between you and me." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good argument. Like, honestly, good
Yeah.
point for Ricky." But again, I still go back to, well, that's the point, because you need faith. You need to believe that something exists. Now, will it be proven some other day? I don't know. But people believed in gravity before Newton came along and was like, oh, here's what's actually going on. And he could like prove that it existed. But before that, they just knew that if you threw something up, it was going to come down. And that you had to believe that was going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you had no way of explaining that to somebody mathematically. So I think someday we'll figure it out. But all that to say, that's what I have to think, or that's what I think about when you were talking about the atheist thing. The Ramadan thing, okay, I can't believe people freaked out about that. These loving Christians are so close-minded.
It's sad that is a joke. That you can say that and that it would be a joke. So I will, yeah. Okay.
The weather.
How's the weather in your area, Andres?
See, people are listening are like, wow, this podcast is really different. It's open.
Open
See,
house.
It's an open house.
Okay. We're going to talk about real estate in a second, but
okay.
if this got your juices flowing,
Yeah.
hit us up on
There's
Instagram.
people
Apparently
driving to work
there's
right now
social
going,
media associated
you
with
can't
this.
prove God exists, damn it. He's stuck behind a train or something. Okay. The weather and the noise. And by sound, right? We're doing this week? The weather
Sure.
in Portland
Like,
or sound?
give me a
It's,
weather report in
it's,
Portland based on a sound.
It's like this. It's like,
Ooh. And
Yeah.
you don't get that weather very often in Portland.
yeah, you do. You get it from now till November. It's just the winter's rainy.
All
I
right.
think it rains every day, but it doesn't.
Weather in Chicago is
Oh, that sounds right.
I mean, the sun's out, right? So, but it's not pleasant.
I'll have you know that Florida gets more inches of rain than Portland does, like Miami.
Well, maybe that's why they've got a glut of housing. If we want to make a transition to real estate,
Boom.
it's
Now we can go-
like
no.
the most.
Are we skipping hot finds?
No. Well, all right, we're gonna table that, but whatever. All right. So what do we? We're going into hot finds.
Hot finds. I'll go first this time.
do.
Yesterday, I went to Salt and Straw, which is a very famous very, very famous place. If you ever come to Portland, it's like a very touristy place to go to of an ice cream shop, and they're known for like having really wacky flavors, and they make all sorts of like there's like bacon.
Give me an example.
Bacon chicken fried ice cream. And you're like, what the
Ooh.
hell? But then they make it good every time. They never miss.
Dude, that's making me hungry right
They're
now.
literally
Maybe
known
it's
for
my
about
fasting.
1,000 and weird flavors. But yesterday, they made an ice cream out of Lucky Charms marshmallows
Okay.
specifically.
And did you have to wait in line to get this?
Oh yeah. Well, no. If you know when to go, no. But usually when you show up there, it's always a line. And there's like multiple locations. They finally expanded to LA and stuff. But like, it's like the place to be in Portland if you go to get ice cream.
So you're just like waiting to find out when they're gonna put out a new flavor, and you're on it.
Oh, every month there's a whole set of new flavors, and they're all wacky. I mean, it's like
Whoa.
avocado oil mixed with like cotton candy. It's like really strange, but they make it work somehow. Probably
Okay.
just douse it in sugar. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
What if you went there and said, "Do you have any vanilla?"
yeah, I mean they have the traditional flavors too, but that's not why you go there.
Does
If you want to
anybody
be
get
vanilla, you don't go to Salt and Straw.
I love vanilla ice cream.
It's great. But that's my hot cold
All
find.
right.
Is really good ice cream. I know it's local, so sorry, but if you're ever visiting, Salt and Straw. That's the place.
Salt and Straw. They're
Yeah.
not a sponsor yet,
But they
but
could be.
they could be. All right. Give us
What's
a
your-
shout out and put a hashtag in our social medias that somehow makes them go, "What? Somebody's talking."
What the hell are these guys doing?
My friend Alex Peterson, who works with me at Southwestern Real Estate, he started a podcast called Whiskey and Real Estate. Check it out on YouTube. I think it might be on Spotify. We can hashtag him in, I guess, if that's how it works.
Yeah, we'll share the episodes.
And he, because it has whiskey in it, he got followed by a local liquor store, and now they're contributing whiskey to his podcast.
We need to do that. What are we doing?
Seriously, we need to hashtag some more people or businesses
Tag
or whatever.
Yeah.
Tag them.
Clip it.
We're
Tag.
calling it hashtagging them.
Yeah, that's fine. That
It's
doesn't sound
consistent with
super
my
old millennial. It's fine.
Ignorance of social media. So, all right. So my hot find. By the way, we had a pre-show fist fight talking about, is this section called hot finds or hot takes or hot topics,
Who
like the
knows?
store in the mall? So, if you have a strong opinion, you can
Let
hit
us
us know. So it's hot finds. I will say this. I've got a couple hot finds. I got one is the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson.
Oh.
Okay, so I don't know if this ever still made the cut, but I think in episode 0 I talked about how I just got back from Palm Springs.
Yeah.
After being there a month. Humble brag. It was a lot. We had to drive because we needed a car and we had to bring the pooch. So we needed, to fill 20 hours. And that book has like literally 100 chapters. It is super long, and it's all kind of talking about Elon Musk, and he had direct access. This was authorized. I mean, it's kind of like he wrote whatever he wanted to write, but he had direct ties in, and it took years to write this book. And I would say my friend Jeff Klein recommended it to me, and I listened to that book on Audible, and it is very telling about what you see going on in the news right now, because basically what you see him doing with the federal government is exactly consistent with the way he has run Tesla and SpaceX and some of these other companies that he's built that have the potential to do amazing things. But man, psycho, just straight psycho. So
Cool.
Hopefully insulting the world's richest man doesn't, interfere with my ability to live a peaceful life. But
We're not sponsored by Elon Musk.
we could be. I would take that. Do you drive a
wow.
Tesla?
No,
Okay.
they suck. I don't like them. I've tried them.
I wanted to get one, and Jenny was like, "You can get an electric car. You cannot get a Tesla."
They're like cheaply made. Like we got one for a rental, and it was very inconvenient. Like we
Yeah.
tried it as a rental one time, and I'm like, this sucks. and like charging stations are supposed to be where they're supposed to be, and then we got there and they weren't there, and all of a sudden we were going to run out of juice, and we had to like, it was a whole thing.
That
I'm like,
takes
gas
a little
stations
getting
are
used
still
to.
great. But they were, you could tell the materials were cheaply made. Like when you got inside the car, you're like, this is not like if I'm buying a $70,000 Mercedes versus a $70,000 Tesla, like I can feel the difference inside. And I know that because we also rented an M-Class Mercedes when we were in Europe, and that thing was nice.
Oh,
inside.
yeah.
Germans know how to make cars.
Well, and the thing is that he is constantly, I mean, I don't know if other people had this, if people have read this book or whatever, but I mean, I know it's super popular. But one of his things is, you know, if the engineers are like, it takes 6 steps to build this piece of the car, he'll be like, do it in 4. And they're like, well, it really can't be done. No, do it in 4. Cut this out. Cut this out. Does it still work? And they'll be like, oh, it does still work. And it's like he does that for every operation. And it's kind of like, yeah, there's probably some wisdom in there. But it's like, dude, what about your cars? How do you know you're not going to be driving down the road and, you know, the seats fall out or whatever?
And they do.
Well,
they do. I mean, they were having that problem with the Cybertruck when it came out where, like, the pedal cover would slip when you would hit the gas. Yeah. And so then the car, and then when you went to let go of it, they wouldn't, like, lift because it would get caught under, like, the Figo. And so it would just keep going. You couldn't. It was like a total. They had to recall, like, 40,000 of them or something like that. It's like it was on the news. But that's kind of the shit that happens when you try to take shortcuts. That's really what he's doing. You're like, it's supposed to be 6. The engineers are telling you it's supposed to be 6. You try to make it in 4. They're going to say, well, we can.
Yeah.
It just won't be safe.
So I will tell you, Hot Find that's a book that I think people should read. And I think that it's helpful to understand the person that, you know, he looks weird and he acts weird. And after reading that book, you kind of get it a little bit.
So he's a duck. Looks and smells like one. I will say I'm a huge fan of Walter Isaacson. So great. He writes great biographies. So definitely on my radar.
It was very easy to listen to, even though I was like, I feel like I've heard this chapter about 30 times because Elon does the same thing over and over, and it got documented in the book that way. I think could have done it a little differently, but whatever. You know, there's something about the repetitive nature of how that book runs that actually it takes a while for it to sink in, and you go, "Oh, I'm starting to get it. Like this is how he rolls." And I'm learning.
Like, do it in 80 chapters.
Yeah,
you could cut some of this out,
Walter. Gosh, it can't be done. Do it.
That's right.
Okay. Now I have a not hot find. This one's a little controversial. If you want to hear it,
lukewarm find.
Disappointing find.
Oh.
Okay. Did you watch the Oscars?
No.
All right. Well, you didn't miss anything, and I wouldn't have, but I am obligated to because we have some people over for an Oscar party every year, and it's a thing. Did you hear about this movie, Anora?
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it. I do want to watch it, and it won Best Picture. I know that.
Yeah, it won like a bunch of awards.
Right.
So, you know, we're trying to now get caught up on all the movies we didn't watch prior to. Oh my gosh. I could not believe it. You don't need to watch it.
It's not good?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's not good. I could not believe it won the Academy Award. It's a movie. It's well acted. And it is... Okay, so do you remember a few years ago, this might have been... I think this was even prior to Me Too, where they were like looking at, you know, the women who were getting Best Actress, right, in a leading role. And they were like, why is it that all the women who are winning these awards are playing the role of a prostitute, a mistress, you know, like all of these derogatory positions in life. And then these are the roles that are winning them the award. And there was this big hubbub about better roles for women so that they can, you know, show what they have the potential to do as actors, right?
Like the range, yeah.
And this was one of the most sexually gratuitous movies that I've ever seen. And I mean, from rolling the credits in the very beginning, it's booty in your face, and it just doesn't stop. And
Wow.
I was just like, and this is a 25-year-old girl who's the actor, and it's like, dude, you struck it big, and you're all out there. I mean, I just felt, I don't know, maybe it's being a dad or whatever. I was just like, I can't believe this won Best Picture. So anyway,
That's wild.
I guess I have to see the other nominees and see if it's actually the
If it's
best
not
out of the
worth it.
bunch. But
Maybe it's like secretly really artistically done. Maybe it's kind of like No Country for Old Men when they won, and everyone's like, "Why did this win?" And then you look at it 10 years later, and you're like, "Actually, that is a masterpiece." It's a
I
really
did
good
like
movie.
that movie.
It's great. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
But I remember when it came out, it was controversial because people were like, "That was a boring film," and then now you watch it, now you're like, "That's a great movie."
It's a great movie.
Um,
All right. So anyway, that's my non-take, or that's my hot take. That's a hot take.
That's a hot take. All right, my hot take is Steph Curry is the greatest basketball player of all time over Chicago's Jordan.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So we should probably talk about real estate.
We're like 25 minutes in.
Timestamp. Timestamp. We're ready to talk real estate.
People are like, where the hell are these guys going to talk about real estate? All right.
Well, let's talk about Trump. Why
All right.
not?
Well, Trump
Okay.
as it pertains to real estate. So,
Tariffs.
because we do want to keep up with current events. And although it might date the episode, like someone might be listening to this 2 years from now going, oh,
Okay, so you guys might have heard
yeah.
that Trump is threatening to put out these tariffs against Canada and Mexico and China and whatever. And today, I guess, is the day where these are supposed to go into effect. And he's kind of been doing a little, jockeying in his position. I'm never going to claim to understand how he functions, just to know that he's been promoting tariffs from the beginning. The whole, lead up to the election, he's been pounding that drum, and now he's in, and now it's happening. Although he said it was going to happen a few weeks ago and then was like, psych, it's not happening. We still need our avocados at a cheap price. So things kind of backed off, but now it's supposed to kick in today. All right, so if that happens, but if you go back and listen to our last episode, we were talking about rising housing prices. And we were talking about that what is driving our current market conditions is this reality that there is not enough inventory to keep up with housing demand. So this is a little bit of a bubble in terms of pricing appreciation. Like things are going up at a pretty strong clip, but it's not from artificial conditions. Like they're not just giving away money so people can buy houses. They're not giving tax credits so people can buy houses. This is just simply, you got 5 people who want a house, it's going to go to the highest bidder, and that's happening over and over.
Musical chairs.
Right. Our only solution to this current situation in the market is to build more houses. So we talked about that a little bit in the last episode. Unfortunately, we had a slow start to the year in terms of what they said was cold weather holding back new housing starts. But now there's going to be tariffs applied to the lumber supply, and we get a huge amount of our lumber from Canada. I believe it's 40% of our lumber comes from Canada.
I also read that from different sources. So people who are listening going, you guys just hate Trump. No, we're just reading the news across the board.
And so far, I'm not saying anything to be hateful towards Trump. I'm just telling it as it is in the news.
Facts as they are.
Because as far as you as a listener, you might be like, I love tariffs. I mean, there's probably
That's
people
fine.
out there that think that, and that's fine. So I'm not judging that. I'm just reporting on the reality. And the reality is that this is going to make it more expensive for new housing starts to go into effect. Because people are going to go, man, how much does it cost to build me that house? And they're like, well, last week it was this, but now it's going to cost you an extra $20,000. It's like, well, maybe I'll just keep looking for an existing home like everybody else.
Yes, and sorry to interrupt you. And to be fair,
Not at all.
just so we can be completely bipartisan in this, so to not make it political, during Biden's administration, there was also, I think it was 2023, where lumber was super expensive for some reason because what happened? Was it the fires? Something happened that year. I can't remember. Don't quote me on this, but I do remember that lumber was super expensive because my brother was actually building a house. And at the beginning of the project, when they were quoting how much it was going to cost to build a house, him and Grant were actually doing this. Grant Greeter. They went in on a house together. And
Hi, Grant.
Hey, Grant. And they were going to build a house, and my brother was like, dude, crazy. When we were first got projected the price of what the house was going to cost, it was like X amount. But since then, things, whatever happened, I don't know what caused the lumber to go up. But he goes, but now it's like this much more because lumber just got so expensive. And I was like, yeah. So to be fair, it's not specifically unique to the Trump administration. It's just that in this particular case, the tariffs are going to the way they work, and I feel I have an economics degree, so I feel entitled to talk about this. Yeah.
Wow.
I went to school for economics, and I minored in math.
Oh,
I got the big brain on Andres.
All right.
So I can tell you for a fact, as an economist, which I am, that is literally what happens with tariffs. Is when you set a price for someone to import, like we're going to charge Canada to, so much to bring in that lumber. What really ends up happening is the price of the goods that are made from that import is what goes up because they got to find a way to pay for that somewhere, because then the price just goes up. So that's really what happens. So that's directly a tie to the tariffs. Just to get back to you on that.
So this is a thing we're going to be watching all year is, are we building enough houses to keep up with demand? And even if we do, they are going to be more expensive to build until they do something about the tariffs. So just as a heads up, that's kind of what is going to impact housing. And it's kind of moving us in the wrong direction. I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying that's not helpful. So so it is what it is.
Yeah, because the prices were already going up, right? Because of lack of supply.
Yeah. Correct. The lack of existing homes compared to the amount of people who want to buy them, like there are just not enough houses. So we got to see if things kick in over the course. If the government makes things easier for builders to build, that would be awesome. That would really be helpful. And that's what it would take to then allow prices to come back down. The caveat I will say is that right now, Florida does have high inventory. So we're not going to dive into Florida because,
those folks.
How many listeners
going on out
care about Florida? I don't even know if we have listeners. So we'll just leave that as a topic to discuss another day.
Now, so just to put a bow on this, and following our analogy, musical chairs, right? There's more people than chairs, so then the chair becomes more desirable, which means the price goes up. But now to add to this analogy, the solution would be build more chairs so everyone has a place to sit. But the problem is they're wooden chairs, and in order to make more chairs, you have to buy wood to make the chairs. But the wood's more expensive because tariffs.
Right, because that whole story you just told wouldn't work if you used houses instead of wooden chairs.
Yeah, of course. I'm dumbing it down for me.
Okay, well, I love it. I love it.
There's someone listening who was like, I needed that, Andres. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I didn't get it when you were talking about houses, but the chair thing.
But now,
yep.
I can explain it to my 5-year-old now. Is what
That's
someone's
right.
thinking, and they're gonna be like, yeah. And then the 5-year-old would be like, wouldn't it make sense to make wood cheaper? And you're like, yes, yes it would. All right, moving on.
Okay. And here's the way that just for people who are listening and they're going, man, you guys are tiptoeing around the topic of politics. How do I know if I'm in your tribe or not? And I would just encourage you, listener, to kind of go, well, maybe I agree with these guys, and maybe I disagree with them. Maybe they agree with each other. Maybe they disagree with each other. Who knows? I mean, we've only got a couple episodes. Might be hard to tell. I would encourage listeners to go, hey, it's okay if we disagree. We can still be friends.
Yeah.
We're not trying to create a tribe that's got a lot of hard boundaries to it to say, do you like this guy? You're in, or do you hate him? You're in. Whatever. It's fluid. We want people that are going, yeah, I'd like to learn more about real estate and that whole thing. And if we touch on some other topics along the way, that's fine.
Yeah.
So,
Which, speaking of which, to continue the topical in the news thing, the main topic for today was
Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, so Berkshire Hathaway, everybody knows them. Warren Buffett, he's got a lot of money, very smart dude. They just released their housing market outlook for 2025. So when I was reading through this, I thought this actually is pretty interesting. I mean, they seem to be a pretty trustworthy source. And then as I got into it, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, this isn't a brag, but maybe it is. I was like, this is exactly what I've already been telling the agents that work at Southwestern Real Estate, and this is what I tell my clients. So I felt pretty validated in their assessment of things. So I'm going to go through this because, yeah. So a couple of things. So what they're looking at is there are a bunch of different influences that go into, housing prices and the kind of demand or the limited demand that you might see. Interest rates would be one of those things, right? Andres, what kind of interest rate do you have on your house?
5.375.
Okay.
Not
So
bad for 2023.
yeah, it really isn't. Right now, rates have been around 7%. So, there's that. I think recently they may have dropped to a little bit less, maybe 6.8. Somebody could get a 30-year mortgage for 6.8. But if you go back to when, as a homeowner, if you're a college student listening to this, you don't know anything about how mortgages work, it's kind of cool. You could go and buy a house today and get an interest rate of 6.8%. But, and Fannie Mae, who helps determine these things, they're projecting that interest rates are actually going to be probably in the high sixes, low sevens until 2027. Okay. So rates are really not going to be changing a whole heck of a lot. And that's an important thing to understand. But if Andres has a house right now and you've got an interest rate that's whatever it was, what was it?
5.375.
5.375. He's just making his payments, living happily, and doing his thing. He can afford it. And someday, if he gets news that, oh my gosh, they cut, the Fed cut rates, and now you're going to be able to get a mortgage to buy a house for 4% interest. Okay. Andres then has an opportunity to call his mortgage person and say, hey, look, I hear rates are lower than what I'm paying. I want to do a refinance into a 4-point interest rate instead of this 5 and change. And so that's the way it works as a homeowner. You can always refinance into a cheaper loan whenever you want. There's costs that are involved with that. So you kind of have to run the math and make sure that the rate change is enough of a discount so that with the fees that are involved, it's still in your best interest to get that lower payment. But that's how that works. Okay. Everybody who owns a house probably already knows that. But were you going to say something?
Yes. I was going to explain a couple things to the people who don't own a house who might be like, what the hell is Fannie Mae? So a couple of things real fast. Interest rate is what you pay for borrowing money. Hopefully that's as simple as I can explain it to that, in case, because some people don't know that and they still get like college loans and go, oh, there's interest on this? Yes. So that's what the bank says you can buy their money for. That's the cost of money. Okay, so that's cool. $100,000, 6.8%. That means that you're paying the bank an extra $6,800 for that $100,000 they loaned you. This is more complicated, but that's just the basic bare bones. Fannie Mae is an organization. It's a company that's government backed that essentially kind of dictates. It's the National Mortgage Association, I think, or something like that. And they basically try to dictate and predict what's happening with mortgage rates based on the psychology, really, of what people are doing when they're buying. So they're the people that are looking at this going, lumber's going to be more expensive, or, the supply is short. And so based on that, they try to make predictions on what interest rates should be. The Fed dictates the interest rates, but they don't really do it directly. They try to lower rates and the cost of money elsewhere so that it evens out at a certain point, but it's not really like a button they press and they say, no, it's 4%. They kind of, it's more like a bowling alley thing where they kind of try to push it this way and that way to try to guide it to a specific point based on what the market reacts to how they're doing it. Go ahead.
Did you black out at any point during that whole soliloquy? That was amazing.
No, I just
I'm
again,
like,
it's
who
just,
is this guy?
that's just my economic brain. I think Fannie Mae
I'm-
was established in 1968, if I'm not incorrect on that.
I had to learn all that stuff to get a real estate license, but
That's
that was the
college.
last time I thought about it.
But that's where we're coming from. Oh, and Berkshire Hathaway is one of the largest real estate companies that's owned by the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett. So if he is saying something's going to happen, it usually does because he's smart like that, which
Yeah.
means Pat's smart like that. What up?
So yeah, I'm smart like Warren Buffett. Okay, so here's what the reality is, and I don't know if I've talked about this before or not, but the reality is that when markets move, people tend to freeze up, right? So if people perceive interest rates are on the climb, and they really did want to buy a house, they're all of a sudden they kind of lock up and go, maybe I should just freeze and not do anything because I don't know what the interest rate's going to be. If I find a house and then I lock in on a mortgage, what if I can't afford it all and I'm stuck with this high rate that I don't want?
Yeah.
If rates are coming down, people freeze and they go, well, I don't want to pull the trigger now. I kind of wait till it hits the bottom and then jump in. So markets are funny like that in that when they're moving, people tend to freeze up. When they're stable and seemingly predictable, people tend to accept their reality and just make a decision based on their reality, such as how bad do I need to move? If the rates aren't really going to change, and that's kind of what Berkshire Hathaway and Fannie Mae are talking about right here, is these rates are going to be similar for the next 2 years. Okay. If that's the case, then financially it's not going to change much for you. If life has happened and you need to buy a house or sell a house, because if you think about it, regardless of economic conditions, people still get divorced. And now they have to figure out what to do with the house and figure out where they're going to live.
Someone's kids are
People
being dunked.
keep having babies. Yeah, somebody's kid is.
So now they got to get divorced.
Call back. Killing babies. Yeah, not pleasant.
It's a great
But people
podcast.
do get divorced, and apparently that's a cause.
That's one of the reasons you might.
One of the only reasons
Yeah,
in
for
Andre's
me.
house. So people get divorced, right? They got to figure out what to do with their housing, and I'm dealing with divorced couples all the time. It's a tricky part of my job. There are people who are having babies and not killing them and staying together, and they have growing families.
Quite
and
the opposite.
those families need bigger houses.
Yeah.
You know, they can live with a small house for a while, and then they're just like, screw it, I have to make this move. Downsizers who are like, man, I can't keep up with this big house anymore. I got to get rid of it. So life happens, and it doesn't matter. During the Great Recession, I was actually able to grow my business year after year after year, even though the market conditions were worse and worse and worse because of the methods that I use for growing my business. And those things are based on the idea that life will always continue to happen. People always have to buy and sell homes, and so that's a thing. All right. Now, if you have a stable, interest rates, and you kind of understand your market, and it's like, oh, well, I guess if it's not really going to change, let's go ahead and take action. Well, here's what there are basically, for people who are looking to buy a house, there's really three things that you're kind of focused on. One is you want to find the right house. Okay, that makes sense, right? You don't want to just buy anything. You want to find the right house. You want to get it at the right price, which we could debate and talk about what right means. But you want to get it for the correct price, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get gouged. You may not be necessarily looking to get a deep discount, but you're trying to get it for the right price. And then you want to get the best rate you can get for the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What they're promoting is the new normal for 2025 is that if you can get one of those three, that's to be expected. Okay. If you can get two of those three, you should consider yourself lucky.
Yeah.
And the only way that you're going to get all three of those things is if we're in some form of a recession.
Yes.
right?
I was going to say it's a recession.
So finding the right house, getting it at the right price, and getting a great rate. You're only getting all three of those if the market conditions have
Things are
completely
bad.
changed and we're in a recession.
Yes.
Okay.
And can we explain why that is?
Sure.
Can you explain why that is? So the reasoning, generally speaking, the reason that interest rates go up is because they need to slow down pricing. So they are trying to discourage people from purchasing things. Therefore, like with the musical chairs we were talking about, the consensus is if interest rates are higher, people are less likely to want to have a chair, and they're going to go find a bench to rent until this is an analogy. It's just
Rent a bench.
you just rent a bench for a little bit, right? So that way people there's not that much demand for the low inventory in this case of the houses.
I like it.
When COVID happened, interest rates were like, I mean, record lows. I mean, they were like super low because the economy slowed down because everybody stopped shopping because there was a world pandemic happening. So or in the event of a recession, when a recession happens, interest rates go way low for the opposite reason, to encourage people to buy things, cars, houses, boats, or whatever, because they need to stimulate the economy, because the more people buy things, the more the economy moves, and then the healthier it gets. But it's always a game, right? If people are buying too much, then prices climb way too quickly when we have inflation. But if people aren't buying enough, then we have a stagnant economy, which means people aren't buying enough when we need. So there's like it's a tuning game that we're playing all of the time. So the reason that they're saying that it would be a recession is because you found the right house, and if you find the right price, it means it's cheap. And part of the reason why it's cheap is because we're probably in a recession if the interest rates are also low, because they're trying to encourage people to buy the cheap houses, which is what was happening in like 2020 when weren't interest rates down like almost to zero? It was like it was like crazy.
So I have an interest rate on my house that's below 3.
That's
I think
nuts.
it might be like 2.7 or something like that.
That's crazy. That's like record-setting low.
I mean, you never would say never, but I would. That was the first time I think in American history where rates were at that low for a mortgage, and it's very unlikely that that's ever going to happen again unless some horrible happens. Which horrible things are going to happen? So maybe it'll happen again.
So that's why they were saying it'd be a recession, because it means that nobody's buying anything, which is why prices are quote unquote correct, and they need to stimulate the economy, which is why the rates are low, quote unquote. So never the 3, likely the 2.
So what does that mean for people right now? It means don't expect, if you're going to go buy a house, don't expect all 3 of those things. Right? What I tell buyers right now, and people will always ask me like, hey, when's the right time for me to jump in? Like, because what they mean is I kind of want to time it. I want to get it just right where the prices, we're just about to shoot up, but I got it right beforehand. Or, rates were super good or they were okay and then they went up afterwards. And I just don't think you can time something like this. And you don't have to I don't think you should feel like you have to time it. If you have a housing need, you should pursue a solution to that need, and get a house that you're excited about and you can afford it. Okay? Because if the rates eventually go lower, you can do a refinance into that lower rate. But if you can get one and you can afford it and it fits your needs, you want to get that done. So and the other thing that I tell people is right now, because of the market conditions being challenging for buyers, you don't want to start your home search like 6 weeks before you need to be in a house. I have people who are in a rental situation till October, and I'm like, you should probably start now, because chances are, even with all the strategies and all the tricks that we can try to do to try to beat out other people to get a property, you're probably going to have to try and maybe fail 5-6 times before we're going to lock down that house. If we get lucky and you get the first one, just know that's a gift. That is unusual, because there's just so many people trying to buy houses right now, and you're going to have competition.
Half of them have more money than you.
Yeah, and again, this is where you get into, this poor dude, client of mine is spending $300, I think is what his budget is right now, trying to get his first place. And there was a condo that he really liked. We made a strong offer. He followed all of my advice. We did the best he could do with what he had to put in. And the agent sent me the email that I hate to get. I regret to inform you that my client decided to go with another buyer. We appreciate your strong offer, but we ended up with 17 offers, 4 of which were all cash. And it's
Jeez.
like, how's a guy who's got, 5 or 10% down going to be competitive? He's not. And this is, again, where you start to see the spread in social,
Welfare.
classes,
Yeah.
where if you've got parents who can give you the cash and then say, get your mortgage after and you can pay us back, like, you have a huge leg up in getting property that other people want.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those parents, you're just going to be trying and trying and trying and trying. And eventually you can still be successful. But that is a part of the journey. And as an agent, it's really, really important. If you're an agent and you're working with folks in today's market, just know that if you pour into them and help them, eventually you will be successful and they will appreciate what you did and they'll tell all their friends about you. Okay. And you can build your career for years to come by always working with a client, regardless of how challenging their circumstances are. Now, one caveat to that is if I have a client who's got a challenging situation, I had a couple years ago, they had down payment for 5% down. And they were looking at houses they could afford in the like 500 range. But they didn't have a huge down payment. They were good with the mortgage payment with 5% down, but they just didn't have a lot of cash. For 2 years, we pursued houses, and they finally locked one down. And I didn't realize that it had taken that long. And we were going to the closing, and they were like, hey, do you know how long we've been doing this together? And I was like, no idea. They said, this actually marks 2 years when we first met you. And I'm like, that's crazy.
That's wild.
Well, the reality is they were listening to my advice at every offer that we tried to make along that 2-year journey. Now, if they were not listening to my advice, we would not have worked together for 2 years, right? So what I often will find with first-time home buyers or whatever, if I'm like, okay, for you to be successful, you're going to have to make an offer that looks like this. And if it's the first time they've made an offer and they're like, and I'm like, here, talk to your lender, make sure you can afford the monthly payment because that's what you're going to live with. Like, don't look at the purchase price exclusively. Look at the monthly payment. That's what you're going to live with. So the taxes and the insurance and the mortgage, package that together. Can you live with that amount at this price? That's what the question is. Here's what you're going to have to offer to get this house. And if they are like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to go that big for it. And then they put in something like $5,000 under list, which is, prices are going over the list price right now.
Because that's competitive. That's how competitive.
And I'll say, okay, I just need you to hear me. I appreciate that this is the first time you've done this, and that's okay. We're going to do this. We're going to do this based on what you want to do. But this will not be competitive. So do you want me to put in this offer? Do we want to just pass on it? Or do you want to just try it? And sometimes newbies just kind of need to try it. And I'll be like, okay, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And maybe we get lucky and we'll get it. And they do, and they don't get the house. And it's like, okay, so here's what I can have a talk with them and go, let's have a reorientation around what it's going to take to really get a house. And let's keep going. And you sometimes people need to fail a couple times before they finally go, I get it. But if people don't change off of that, and I've had clients where they go, they're just continuing to offer these unrealistically low offers, and they're not following my advice, then at some point I have a business decision to make and go, is this worth my time? I want to help them, but if they aren't going to follow the expert's advice, then it's okay to go, I don't think this is going to end successfully. I don't think you're going to get a house. I don't think I can continue to help you, but I do have somebody I could recommend to you if you wanted to keep looking. Okay. At that point, I'm going to give that client to a brand new realtor in my office. and I'm going to say, here's the deal. They're continually offering low offers, but I'm going to give them to you. I don't know if they're ever going to be successful. You might get lucky, but you need the experience of writing offers and presenting offers and showing houses. So you'll get some reps with these guys. Okay. And that's a way that the person doesn't feel completely shut out and neglected. And it kind of serves a greater good for the agent to go, I do need practice.
Yeah. Because you don't need to practice how to make more offers. You've been doing it forever. And the other people aren't being coachable enough to listen to particular experience. So then the experience doesn't matter. It's just the at-bats, which the agent's happily providing.
That's right.
Everybody wins.
Yep.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, Pat handed me off to a new agent. Well, now you know why.
We're just being open house about it.
That's right.
Wow, there's a lot of good wisdom in that story alone. I mean, I think it's important to from a buyer standpoint. Like if you're listening to this as a buyer, how to be a good buyer is just as important as how to have a good agent. Because part of the reason you're getting an agent is you don't know how to buy a house. And so
that's right.
So being a good buyer is just as important as having a good agent, right? And being coachable. And those people look back on you and they said 2 years later and they're like, it worked out because things changed, interest rates changed, the market changed over those 2 years till it finally made sense to do it the way you guys had been going on about it. So that's great. Dang.
Yeah, she was pregnant when we started and they had a baby in the closing room when we finished. So it went a while.
That's cool.
But I loved it the whole time. Those guys were awesome clients.
And they'll whenever they need to sell or whenever they need to buy a second home or whatever, they will come back and just trust you all the way through for that too.
And most importantly, they're telling all their friends.
That's right. That's right. Man, that's great.
So,
did they name the baby Pat? Patricio?
No, they did not.
That would have been cool.
It would have been cool.
Do you have any other thoughts on like what people should expect? I mean, because I think this is a pretty technical episode compared to some of the other ones we've done as far as just like really getting into the weeds of stuff. And I hope I didn't dumb it down too much for people, but I feel like there's probably some people that are going to be listening going, I lost track, but hopefully that my dumbing down of this helped them.
Dude, you the smartest things that were said today came out of your mouth. What are you talking about? You did dumb it down into musical chairs. I do like that, but you explain Fannie Mae and the Fed, and I really didn't want to have to go there because I was like, I'm going to say something that's not exactly right, and people who do know the difference are going to be like, fraud, skip this podcast.
Yeah. Fair enough. Are there any, as we're getting up here close to the hour, are there any closing thoughts that you think of that you definitely need to address also that we didn't cover through either Fannie Mae or Berkshire?
No, nothing like that. I do think it's worth this though. And again, even if your realtor is giving you like solid advice and you are trying to put your best foot forward, it's important to remember in that case that I just talked about where 17 people tried to make offers, there's only one person who's going to get that thing, right? If there's 5 people trying to get a property, there's only one that comes away with it. And the other 4 stay in the market and start looking for the next house that's like it. And as soon as that one pops up, those same people are jumping onto that property. So you have to have a combination of things. And what's difficult about this is the buyer doesn't know if they're getting good advice from their realtor. They just know that they aren't getting the house, right? So that can be a really hard thing to know. Like, does my realtor know what the heck they're doing?
Yeah.
Because I've written like 5 offers. I still don't have a house. That is a very normal thought process. And I don't know if there's a foolproof way around that to go, no, your realtor's not an idiot. I think it would be fair to say to your realtor, hey, we've been doing this and we've been following your advice. How come we're not successful? How come we're not doing that? It'd be interesting to hear how your realtor might answer that question. What I find is there's usually a couple of things. One is what kind of financing do you have and how large is your down payment. And if you are just kind of not in a super strong position there, it's going to be really hard to be competitive. Okay. And the other thing, shoot, let's see. Brain is blanking. Okay, let's see here. Wait, where was I? So there's down payment. Oh, and then the other thing might be, are you actually following the advice? So if your realtor is saying you really have to go here to expect to be successful, you're going to have to include these dynamics into your offer. And you're kind of shaving off some of those things. You're not really going all in. Well, then that is going to be something that you need to hear as well. But I think it's a fair conversation to have. If you're feeling it, you should ask your realtor about it.
Yeah. Well, and it just kind of goes back to like the transparency and like the I mean, because we talked about how to find a good agent in one of our other episodes. So if you haven't listened to that, by the way, go check that out. But that is a healthy conversation to be able to even have with your realtor, and that's a sign of a good one. But I think it's clear that that's a good asterisk to have put after this whole discussion that we've had so far, because it's like there's that element of it too, you know. So
yeah.
Dang, this is great. I hope everybody wrote down everything, man. This has been great.
If not, there'll be a transcript on our Instagram.
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Something like that. Do you want to do Back in Black again?
Or going out?
Maybe I'm just going to clip the beginning of it. Just put it Back in Black. Oh, man. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I'm Andres Gamboa. We've been on with Pat Roach. This is the Open House Podcast. Bye.